Gains for the markets, but let's focus on a couple of stocks within the pharmaceutical space. One particular stock that I want to point out is aartidrugs, where we do understand from the Commerce Minister that that the DGTR has terminated any anti-dumping investigation that was ongoing for the antibiotic metronidazole imports from China. So they had initiated a probe in September of 2022. And aartidrugs had also filed an application for the anti-dumping duty on this particular import. Now, I did speak to a couple of people who are close to the matter, and they had indicated that they had applied for an anti-dumping investigation on this particular antibiotic import from China. The reason for the application was the difference in raw material costs between Indian and Chinese companies, and that had become even more after the Russia-Ukraine war began. The Indian raw material prices have been higher for metronidazole, and hence there was a request for this anti-dumping investigation. We do understand that it was taken a little bit, the company was taken a little bit by surprise with regards to the probe actually not going through. So they will probably do some research and get in touch with the required authorities and get back on more information. But separately, a lot of the pharmaceutical companies are in focus on allegations in a US court against Dr. Reddy's as well as other companies on unfair competition in the blockbuster cancer drug Revlimid generic. To talk more about this, we have Vishal Manchanda, who's the pharma analyst at Systematix Group, joining in. Vishal, hi, welcome to the show. If you could just start by giving us a perspective on how serious this particular litigation is for companies such as Dr. Reddy's, considering we have seen these cases happen in the past.
Yeah, good afternoon. So I think ever since the settlement was struck, the street was always cautious about the terms, because the terms allowed limited volumes to all players. So that is something we have never seen in the past. What we have seen is settlement terms usually allowing companies a timed entry and a staggered entry, but the volumes are generally not restricted. So in this specific case, the volumes was restricted and the time was also defined. So a bit different from what we have seen in the past, and that made everybody cautious about such antitrust suits being filed against the settlement terms. So very difficult to kind of take a call on what would be the outcome of such legal challenges, because we are not aware of the detailed settlement terms. The settlement terms remain confidential. And as we understand, these settlement terms are vetted through probably the US FTC, so which kind of vets them for any anti-competitive nature. Probably, so that really the FTC vetting such settlement agreements takes off some risk, but we really don't know what the final outcome would be out of such litigations.
So, Vishal, hi, good afternoon. I understand that you don't know how long these litigations would go on for, so that kind of timeline and the eventual ramifications. But from an investor standpoint, right, say somebody who owns a stock like Dr. Reddy's, how do you approach it? Do you just, keep the faith that eventually the companies are going to ride this out?
Yeah, so I think at this juncture, I would rather prefer to be on the sidelines. So not on the sidelines, but rather look to exit these stocks, because what I see is at current market prices, the risk reward is not very favorable. Even if the litigation outcome is in favor of the generic companies, it's not going to kind of give you too much upside from the current price. But if the litigation goes against them, the risk reward is certainly unfavorable. We can see a downside at current market price, because a negative legal outcome would mean probably these companies giving back all the money they have earned on the opportunity, plus they're also losing out on the future cash flows from the opportunity. In addition, there could be penalties too. So
have you ascribed any kind of probability to this?
Can't really assign a probability because these legal challenges have too many variables to understand.
Okay. Generally, rule of thumb is around 15 to 20% of profits. Generally that's what is a litigation amount or a settlement which takes place, or maybe 20 to 40%. In that sense, are you probably going to tweak your EPS estimates for a couple of these companies under coverage, say 2 to 3 years down the line?
How I'm looking at the potential liabilities is what these companies have been challenged that they have been because of the anti-competitive nature of the settlement. Consumers have been made to pay much higher amount than they would have paid had generics entered in a normal way. So a typical generic would have eroded prices if all these players would have entered the normal way, prices would have eroded 90%. But it's not the case right now. So I think what companies would be expected to pay is the difference between what consumers, so the damage to the consumer is what the companies would be expected to pay. So probably a large part of the sales that they have earned would have to be returned, is how I look at it. Right now, I'm not going to kind of reduce my estimates because we really don't know how long the legal case might long, but certainly it's a case for reducing the price earning multiple to adjust for the risk that we see in the out of this.
Just a quick last question, Vishal, with regards to this. On the way forward when it comes to this litigation, one, are you expecting more such allegations from other parties? And two, what might the litigation costs be based on past precedent?
Can't talk about the litigation cost, but probably we have seen some antitrust lawsuits being filed in the past too. So I think this is another antitrust lawsuit that has been filed recently. And I think we could see more in the future.
With regards to Revlimid generic?
All stakeholders can basically look to kind of file an antitrust case here.
Okay. So you said that, the risk reward is not in favor of many of these stocks. So you'd rather either sit on the sidelines or move out of them. Can you help us with what are the stocks that you'd put on the back burner where you have an underperform call? And also, since you track the entire sector, since we're talking about it, which are the stocks that you still like over the next, say, 6 to 12 months?
Yeah. So specifically on Revlimid, we see Dr. Reddy's as most exposed to the opportunity in terms of a larger percentage of their profit coming from this standalone opportunity and a larger percent of the future profits also coming from this opportunity. So I think it would be an opportune time to kind of, so I'm not sure how the outcome would shape up, but the risk reward is not certainly favorable. So investors can look to kind of book profits here. That's something, that's some, on cipla also, they have a reasonable contribution of profits coming from Revlimid. There is a visibility around cipla in terms of complex generic launches coming in FY25 and FY26. So to that extent, they are a bit de-risked in terms of taking care of future earnings. While we do not have visibility around Dr. Reddy's in terms of what they can launch in terms of complex generics that can replace generic Revlimid as a earnings driver. So I would look cipla as relatively better placed. Sunpharma has got a very small contribution coming from generic Revlimid, so they do not really get meaningfully impacted if things go wrong for sunpharma. Plus, they as a company, they provide a structural growth opportunity in the US. So I would prefer Sun and cipla over other generic names, considering the situation where we are in.
Right. I was just looking at granules just before we let you go. It was about 300 just a couple of weeks ago. It's rallied all the way up to 360. Apart from the names that we discussed right now, do you think there are other names that provide opportunity, not only in the pharma space, but also in the healthcare space, hospital space, if at all you have any?
So I'm not covering the diagnostic or the hospital space as of now. So covering purely the pharma space.
All right, Vishal, thank you so much for joining in and giving us your views. Ekta, you want to sum that up?
Well, it's definitely something that we will watch out for going forward in terms of the possible litigations or future litigations on Revlimid generic itself. So then, one quarter, many quarters down the line, you will find one sort of litigation, which, settlement amount, which will probably hit the profits for a pharma company, but it's normal course of business. So it'll be something that at least commentary from the management will be awaited during this earnings season.
All right. Well, let's do one thing. Let's slip into a short break.